Legacy includes the lives he touched right here in Detroit during a visit back in 1990, soon after his release from prison in South Africa.
7 Action News reporter Andy Choi is live at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History tonight, where President Mandela is being remembered. Andy?
Yeah, Carolyn and Stephen, if you want to know just how much of an impact Nelson Mandela has had on the people of Detroit, look no further than photographer Monica Morgan, who was kind enough to join us tonight. I mean, you've had a very emotional experience with all of this. I mean, this man shaped your career. Talk about that.
Yes, when I was in middle school, my teacher taught me about apartheid, and I couldn't believe that slavery still existed during my lifetime. And I always had an interest in that apartheid system in South Africa. And so when Nelson Mandela came to Detroit, I was selected to be in his motorcade, and I traveled and took pictures there. And then when it was time for the first star race elections, I went over there to cover the first star race elections. So I was there for a bombing that went off prior to the elections. I was there for his inaugural, and I was there the moment he raised his hand and went from prisoner to president.
Let's take a look at some of your beautiful work here. I mean, you brought this beautiful display. Talk about this newspaper clipping.
Well, I was actually in South Africa, in Kunu, on Nelson Mandela's 90th birthday. It was July 18th, and that's an actual newspaper from his hometown. I was there in his home for his 90th birthday party. I wasn't supposed to take a photograph, but I couldn't resist. That's why the image doesn't really show a cake, but just to be there for that moment was just so unbelievable. And then a few days later, he was in his museum where my work was on display, of pictures of Rosa Parks juxtaposed next to his, and I was able to see him again and actually take another photograph with he and his wife.
Yeah, I want to ask you about just this beautiful photo, so candid. Nelson Mandela looking into his candles there. Can you talk about the moment you snapped that shutter?
Well, being there, it was just amazing. And his wife actually took his arm because he needed help standing, and he leaned over the cake just moments after he had given a toast with Thabo Mbeki, who was the president who followed him in office. So just to be there for those moments, and I had bad knees then, and so it was hard for me to lean down to get the image, but I knew that was just a moment that I had to capture. There was another time, I've got to just tell you this.
Sure.
In South Africa, he had just been interviewed by Peter Jennings, and there was no one else there but the three of us, and I asked him if he would take a moment to pose for me, and he did. It was just, I couldn't say anything because I was so in awe, but he actually stood there and posed for me those few moments after he was interviewed by Peter Jennings. He had stepped out in the hallway and was about to get on the elevator, and I kind of found out he was there at that moment, and I just couldn't resist.
Such intimate moments, so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing them tonight. Monica Morgan, Detroit area photographer. With that, we're going to send it back to you in the studio.
An amazing Detroit area photographer. We've watched her work for at least a decade here at Channel 7, and Monica does wonderful work, and so glad to hear your memories of Nelson Mandela tonight.
All right, thank you very much.